Welcome to the How to Code Well podcast. My name is Peter Fisher. I'm a freelance web developer and the host and coding teacher at How to Code Well. Before the show starts, I just want to say a massive thank you to all of the Patreon supporters for supporting this channel and the podcast through these difficult times. If you want to be a supporter, please go to patreon.com/howtocodewell. Your support is much appreciated. And of course, never miss an episode. Go to howtocodewell.fm to see the previous episodes. Okay, let's get on with the show. Hello coders and welcome to another How to Code Well podcast. Today we're going to be talking about remote working when we're in lockdown. I have the pleasure of being joined once again by Matt Brunt. Hi Matt, how's it going? Have you had a good week so far?
So far it's been pretty good. Work's ticking over nicely, thankfully. And the sun's currently been shining. It's been nice spending a little bit of time outside in the garden. So
yeah,
on a personal level, I'm doing okay.
Excellent. And health-wise, everything's cool?
Seems to be pretty good so
good.
far. Yeah.
It's funny that we have to check these things now.
Right? How you doing? No, but how are you really doing?
How you really doing?
Yeah, absolutely. But it's needs must at the minute. So
yeah. So you were on the show on episode 32. We were talking about conferences and yep. Because you're a speaker. But for those who are new to the show, can you just introduce yourself and say what you do?
Sure. Yeah. I work in a team. We all primarily work remotely currently anyway. But we are building an online platform to be used in competition by people to compete against each other in cybersecurity capture the flag events, or for online training for people in the field of cybersecurity primarily. So we run online events from anywhere from 30 people to 3,000 people, all competing for prizes or for the reputation of being the best in sort of the event that they're in. We've had teams from companies big and small on it, and it's been a fun challenge. It's a platform with a demographic unlike any that I've sort of had to build things for in the past. So it's been a nice challenge.
Excellent. Oh, that sounds great. And I guess with the way things are, online learning is actually quite a topical thing at the moment. People are wanting to learn more and they're forced to do so online.
Yeah, absolutely. It's again, from a kind of a what we do level, it's an online training platform for cybersecurity, and it doesn't feel like there's ever been a time where it's been more relevant than it is sort of right now. So we're in a lucky and privileged position in that regard.
So are you seeing like an increase in security issues due to being locked down?
There's the number of sort of phishing scams that are going around just seems to be going up and up. Yeah. That was the trend anyway, but I think with things like the government text messages that went out to people, from Gov UK saying, here's the things you need to do, here's the link to click for more coronavirus, it was incredibly easy for a period for people to spoof from any sort of provider that they were sending a message as if it was coming from Gov UK. And then with the way phones work, those messages were appearing in the same thread as the official one, and it's got a link to take you to some malicious website. Yeah. There's reports of things like, oh, you want a COVID-19 testing kit, pay us this much and we'll send you it. And people are jumping at that because of the times that sort of we find ourselves in.
I had one of those emails actually. Yeah. And I had a bunch of emails from banks that I never knew offering me like mortgage holidays. Yep.
I've got 12 mortgages with 12 different banks. This is incredible.
Yeah.
It's bad enough at the best of times, but when they sort of play on people's desperation in times like this, it's just not nice.
Yeah,
it's not going to get any better at the minute. It's a really sort of sad thing to sort of have to say, but it's not going to get better. Not for a while.
Yeah, and you know what? At the moment we all are wanting to have more human interaction, and so people are using apps and stuff to speak to people, and there is a generation that never really used all of this, or if they did it, they would do it very sporadically. And I'm talking about the older generation now having to use tools like Zoom or Google Hangouts or other sort of group messaging type stuff. And so there's a group of people who perhaps aren't as tech savvy as perhaps their younger counterparts are. So there's a bit of a risk there. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I've taught many people recently how to use Zoom.
Zoom training classes. There
Zoom training classes for the win. Yeah, I'm sure that's a Udemy course somewhere. So you work remotely, right?
Yes, I've done so for the past year and a bit. I started at the beginning of last year, so I've been working remotely for about 15 months.
Excellent. So we're both remote devs. How do you think remote working has changed since this lockdown?
I think one of the things that I've seen is that because a lot more people are working remotely, a lot more companies have put a big focus, as you mentioned, even families using tools like Zoom or Hangouts to keep in touch. Companies are now sort of forced to use that almost, because they've got these people in different locations. So you can see it in Zoom's stock price. This all sort of kicked off and their stock price went through the roof. They've had their share of security and privacy issues as well because of the increased attention. It's been like that for a long time and there was never that much attention on them, so people didn't look. But due to that sort of thing, companies are being forced to use these tools and to look at things. Okay, well, people are working from home. So not only do we need to consider, what equipment do they need to do that? Because if everyone's tied to a desktop computer in the office, do they need to take that home now? And what are the logistics of that? Or what are the logistics of we can't now sit around on the sofas and chat about stuff? We need to move it to a virtual space, be that through text or audio or video. So I think it's focusing on communication from companies in how they operate we can't expect everyone to be always available when they're in the office at the time, because if you're working from home, there are periods when you're downstairs grabbing a cup of tea or you're out of your office, and because you're not in an office with everyone else, it's not immediately obvious that that person is away from their desk.
Sure.
So it's maybe moving things not to be fully like asynchronous in the sense that I send a message and just expect it back whenever, but not expecting a reply immediately from someone because you don't know what's going on their side. They might be in the zone and head down and focused and haven't even seen the notification pop up. So I think that's something that companies are going to, if they haven't already realized, they're going to have to suddenly realize that you can't just expect someone's attention like that.
Yeah, that you've picked on a really good point there. I remember when I first started remote working and I was extremely apologetic for every time I wasn't available, right? So, going to the loo, if you were in an office and you went to the loo and someone went to your desk, someone would say, oh, he's in the loo. I get that. It's as someone who is a remote dev, at the start, you want to try and make sure that you are available as much as possible, right? Because that's what you're used to, and that's what the managers and PMs are used to, right? They just walk past your desk, they know that you're there, or they walk past your glass room and they can see through the window, and they know they're there. They don't have any level of interaction, but they can see you're there, and with the tools like Skype and Hangouts and all of this stuff, or Slack even, and Discord, you can just set yourself to invisible or inactive and you could still be there. So you can lurk. Yeah. So there's another side of it.
Typically when we use Slack at work, if we're online, we try to make it obvious. We don't sort of lurk in the kind of away mode if we're really there. I have an issue for some reason on my Mac. Whenever I wake Slack up in the morning, it decides to not put me as there and leaves me as away. And I'm sat there and it gets to like 10:30 and I suddenly realize, oh, my icon's not green.
That's happened to me before. Yeah.
But for things like, say, when we go for lunch, we put a little icon next to our name just to say we're off on lunch, so that if you do go to do something and you are there on lunch, because you can see the little icon that says, hey, I'm off on lunch. So we try and use the sort of the icons and the status just to give a quick indication of what's going on. So if there's a red circle, it means they're in like do not disturb mode. Don't, they need some, or if you do message them, they're going to ignore it until they get back, but try not to, unless the building's on fire, as it were. But try and leave them be, sort of thing. So those sorts of things are quite useful, but again, it's that kind of, you've got to then retrain yourself to put that in place, because you don't, in the real world, you don't have to do that. If you're out at lunch, people know that because they either saw you got up and walk away, or they can see you sat over on the the dining table eating dinner or something. So that just happens in the real world, whereas when it comes to the technology side of things, there's nothing really automatic to do that. So you have to make a conscious effort to make that visibility available to your colleagues, so that they know what's going on. It can help with there are integrations and plugins for something like Slack. If you've got a meeting booked in Outlook, it can connect to Slack and it can update your status. So if you've got a meeting booked in your calendar, it will then update your status to say they're in a meeting with this sort of thing. So that stuff can help. I think we're going to see a lot more of everything. We've already had a world where everything talks to everything, but I think there's going to be a lot more of that based on this, because you're going to think of things that never needed it before. But I'm interested to see what's going to come out of the back of this when someone goes, I never knew that particular app could do with talking to that particular app.
Yeah.
I'm looking forward to seeing what comes out of that, if there's anything positive that sort of comes out of this situation.
Yeah, we'll talk about like the future changes after the lockdown later, but I think that is an interesting topic to pull apart. Let's talk about the practical stuff, like for someone who has never done remote working, right? Just think of it from that perspective. What things do you need?
So I can kind of, based on my experience, I know what I consider a need. It's going to be slightly different for others, but for me, I need a dedicated space for it. So I've know a lot of people that are now working remotely, friends of mine, who've never had to have this before, so they haven't got the space for it. So they're having to, make room on the dining room table, or, like one of those little desks at the sofa type thing, and they're trying to sort of make do. When I started this job last year, me and my partner, we moved at the time because I knew I was going to be working remotely, and we were in a tiny little 1-bed apartment before. She was also working remotely as well, and we're like, this is never going to work. So we moved to a bigger house. We got a 3-bed house, so we've each got our own separate offices as well. So I've got a room that is my space for my office primarily, doubles as a guest room when we have people stay over if we need to, part of the airbed. But having a space that I can sit in and make my own and my office is, for me, that was probably the most important thing. Because I can close the door as well, and if my partner's home, she knows that if the door is closed, I'm in do not disturb mode again. That's physical. This is me. This means that the door is closed. Don't disturb me unless the house is on fire. There's an emergency. So that's sort of the key thing for me. Other than that, I think having a nice screen is a good one, and sort of what I would consider an ergonomic setup. You spend a lot of time sat in a chair. Make sure you've got a good chair, and if you don't want to sit down, get a really good standing desk with a pad to stand on, because that'll save you. But a nice screen helps, because you're going to be staring at it every day. And this is a case of, again, if you're a remote worker, then the company you work for might have budgets for that sort of thing, so they invest in that sort of thing. In an office, they'll generally provide the equipment. Maybe you're taking it home now. If you weren't working remotely previously, maybe you're sort of taking it home. And then things like, a lot of people use their laptop webcams and microphones, which they'll do the job, but it's just nicer to have a good webcam and microphone. It makes everyone's life just a little bit nicer and easier. If nothing else, it's nice when your cat runs across your shoulders or something, that everyone can see them in high def. That's nice, that sort of thing. So, but a nice webcam and microphone, you don't have to spend a lot of money on it. And again, your company might have the ability for you to expense that, or have it bought through the company card if they've got a budget for this sort of thing. Now they're moving remotely. Not everyone can be expected to be like, right, you're working from home now, and you're like, well, now I need to spend hundreds of pounds on a new desk, chair, monitor. Not everyone can do that. I'm a bit of a tech head myself anyway, so I already had really nice screen, really nice webcam, nice chair. I had all that stuff already, so it was kind of okay for me. But had I been starting a new job and not had that, I would have absolutely been saying to my employer, yeah, absolutely, what's my budget for this stuff so I can get myself set up? Because you'd be spending it on me if I was in an office. Just because I'm working from home, it shouldn't be on me to do that necessarily.
Sure. Really good points. Yeah,
but other than that, I personally like having quite a big desk. So I've got, a nice big desk in front of me where if I do want to grab a bit of paper and scribble something down, plan some stuff out, I've got enough space to do that. But those are probably the key things for me would be, nice space, decent chair.
Yeah, I mean, the space thing is really interesting because it's funny how much I sort of expand during the day, right? So I've got my laptop here, I'm speaking on the iMac here, and I've got a Mixer desk there, and it's actually quite a tight space. But I'll have pieces of paper just sort of flowing about, and Post-it notes everywhere. And picking up on your point about the webcam and the microphone. So I've obviously gone through several iterations of microphones and several iterations of cameras because, of the YouTube stuff. This, for instance, is quite an expensive piece of kit, but I've had it for several years. However, the webcam, this thing that I'm talking on right now, this is a Logitech C920, and I got it for about 30 quid.
That's what I have too. Yep.
Several years ago.
I have the exact same camera, and I know that at the minute they're particularly difficult to find on Amazon because everyone's working from home, and they sold out everywhere.
Yeah,
so a lot of people are struggling to find them. But yeah, the C920 is what I've got as well, and there's probably the best 30 quid I've spent for a computer part in a while because it's been fantastic.
Yeah, and there's no need to get any better than that. I mean. I've done all sorts of videos up on YouTube with that, and it's worked wonders. I do have other cameras and bits and pieces for when I'm out and about and stuff, but this is very plug and play. So you don't have to spend lots and lots of money on stuff. But the point that you made about the chairs and the desks, that's I would prefer to spend more money on those things than the cameras that you use, say. 3-4 times a day for like a couple of minutes, right? So have a chair. A good chair is very important. However, I got myself into a bad habit of having a very nice chair, but then not sitting in it properly. Yeah. So I've progressed to a standing desk. And it's something that it took me a while to save up for, but it's certainly good. It's automated, and it has I can change the height and stuff automatically, which is nice. And usually what happens is during the mornings I'm stood up, and then in the afternoons I'm sat down because I find that my back goes a bit funky if I'm and I put my weight on different parts. So these things are really good. The point I'm trying to make is these things are really good. It's how you use them, and I am a slouch.
No, I'm guilty of that myself. I found myself. One thing I did find that helped a lot was raising my screen a little bit, because that made me sort of set up a bit more in order to see it properly. And I found, because I did find myself when I typically liked it quite low, and then I end up sort of hunched over and claw fingers and hunched over.
Yeah,
by the end of the day, my neck's hurting, and I'm
like a T-Rex trying to drink soup.
Basically, that's a really good way of putting it. Yeah, I'm gonna use that one now. Yeah. Absolutely. And raising the screen up just sort of makes you set up a little bit more, and you have to kind of not necessarily lean back, but you have to be set up in order to see it comfortably. So,
well, it's remarkable sorry, I was just going to say it's remarkable how much we lean forward without actually knowing about it. So we think we're actually leaning back, but we're actually just straightening up.
No, those HCI guidelines that you see in offices when they come around and make you sign the checklist to make sure everything's okay, they're there for a reason, and they people might think they're silly, but it makes a difference. You need to make sure that things are set up properly.
Well, I know now, speaking to various people during the lockdown, there's been a lot of risk assessments for people working from home because they obviously have to assess their working from home conditions. So potentially there could be room for maneuver there for getting the right kit. And one thing I would suggest is to be very honest with those risk assessments, because it's on your, it's only going to benefit you, right?
Yeah, absolutely. It's sort of not being honest about it or trying to hide things and whatnot. It's never going to benefit you. They're there to make sure that you're looked after and things are done properly. Not there to, if anything, now's the time to be honest about it, because it's not your fault, and there's no blame here. It's just this is the situation we find ourselves in. Let's make sure things are done properly. And
if you were to be a remote dev after this, right, then you would see this as an opportunity for laying those foundations. So getting yourself sorted out now is going to be brilliant for you in the future. Yeah. So what kind of benefits are there to what are the benefits for just the general benefits of people working remotely? I mean, one thing I can think of right now is time, right? But is there anything else?
I think, the biggest one is time. Things like when you go down to make a cup of tea or grab a drink, it's while the kettle's boiling, it's really easy to empty the dishwasher or stick another load of laundry on. And then that's time excuse me, that's time that you don't have to spend in the evening doing chores and housework, and it gives you that extra time in the evening as a sort of a double hit of, I say 5 minutes now, I say 5 minutes in the evening as well. It's just, and also, once it's in the evening and you're in that kind of wind down mode, you don't want to be doing housework and that kind of thing. It's much more difficult to do so. So time is the biggest one. I found for things like if you've got pets, it's really nice to be home with them, or we've got 4 chickens, 3 reptiles, 2 hamsters, and a bunch of stick insects at the minute.
Wow.
We're running a zoo here, basically. But things like my bearded dragon that I rehomed a few weeks back needs feeding twice a day, needs looking after, so I'm able to do that. He's in the tank behind me, and I can, my sort of morning routine is get up in the morning, go outside, let the chickens out, check the eggs, feed the chickens, come back in, feed the dragon, that sort of thing. So it's, I've feed the dragon. Yeah. I've got the ability to do that. And that's a really nice one. We don't have kids, but I've got friends that are now working from home who do have kids, and they say the biggest benefit for them is that they get to sit down and have lunch with their kids. And so that, they're not having to leave at 7 o'clock in the morning, and they're sitting and having breakfast with their kids, and they're just spending more time with the family, and they do not want to change that for the world. They've kind of realized that I've got all this extra time to see, especially if they're young, I've got all this extra time to see my kid grow up, and they realize just how much they've been missing. And they kind of now realize that I don't want to miss that at all, and they don't want to go back to an office.
Yeah.
And I can completely understand it.
Definitely. I mean, the time that you spend, like, I know people who will, like, they'll drop the kids off to, at school or whatever, and then go on to work. And that's time spent with the children, right?
Yeah.
But usually that's time spent concentrating on driving, and also time spent thinking about what you're going to do at work. Yeah. So, physically, it's time with the children. Mentally, you're elsewhere, and emotionally, you're kind of exactly. Yeah. Which that's just natural, right? That's just the way it is. But if you're not having to battle the traffic, then you can spend that time, mental time, with your children. Which I think if you look upon it like that, then this time is a bit of a gift. It's an opportunity to see how people can work differently, once this all calms down, fingers crossed. Yeah. So, what about in terms of from the client's point of view, from the company owner, right? What is the benefits of remote workers?
I think that one thing that I've seen remote work push, and especially now that it's forced upon us, as it were, with things like Zoom and Hangouts being used more frequently, a lot of things that might be considered in-person meetings, or they feel like a lot of effort to do, you need to get together with the client to discuss the latest spec or this, that, and the other. And it can feel like it's a whole, I've now got to write that day off because I'm traveling to the office, and then we're having a chat, and then we're traveling back, and that kind of thing. That time is massively reduced, and it feels a lot easier to do that sort of thing, because people are realizing that meeting that they were going to have doesn't need to be a in-person meeting. They can do it over Zoom or Hangouts, with some collaborative editing tools. They may be using, Google Docs with the comments and annotations and working a bit more collaboratively like that. It's sort of forcing people to look at other ways to do things. And I think a lot of the ways they're doing it are more efficient and beneficial for people. That's not to say that in-person meetings should go away in the future if once we sort of come out the other side of this, because there is only so much bandwidth you can have. But I think a lot of it's going to be realized, actually, we can get more communication and collaboration through this, because we're now able to do it much quicker and much more easily. And you're not having to block out a whole day to go and do that thing. You can kind of keep the communication up a lot more frequently. And that just leads to better projects, because you can change things quicker, and you can just make sure that you're all on the right page. So it's kind of forced us to do that, but I think it's a good thing. And I think that's, it also means that people aren't traveling, less cars on the road, less traffic, all those other benefits. There's a lot of takeaways from that aren't just, in terms of the project being done better. There's, less traffic, less wear and tear on things, and everything like that's just, internet infrastructure aside, a lot of things are, being overloaded on that at the minute. But I think that's an easier problem to scale than it is the people side of things.
I think from like a perspective, if I was to think about all the times I went to travel quite far to see people, like when I was working full time, as a full-time employee on the payroll. And there was a period of my life where I was traveling huge distances to get there and back. And I just think about it now, like that was just such a huge risk. Just, driving for, an hour and a half there and back. So 3 hours at probably an average speed of 60 miles an hour. That's bonkers.
Yeah.
Before having like my first coffee. So, yeah, I think that a lot of people will be thinking about this as sort of, looking at how they can do things differently once they come out of this, I think. And I think that there's some things that people will gain from this that they didn't realize that they would gain from it. On the flip side, of course, there's all sorts of things that might come out, unfortunately, when you've got when you're forced in a space with people that aren't necessarily great to get on with.
Yeah.
Which, luckily I haven't had that experience, but I would imagine that would be quite painful if you have to work from home and you're in an environment that you prefer the environment of the office more than than the environment that you're forced to be within.
Yeah, I mean, I know some people that they do love working in offices, and sort of the office is the buzz of just sort of background noise and people and that kind of thing is sort of what they thrive on, and I can fully see how that would be the case. It's not my sort of choice personally, but I know people that do like that, and they like being in an office where everyone is not distracting each other, but able to sort of grab attention because that's just their style of working. And
sure,
and they don't have to sort of get into focus on one thing. They're doing a lot of idea bouncing around and that kind of thing, and they like to be able to just grab everyone and go and chat about something. And that's typically a little bit more easier to do when you're in an office, like you say, because you can get that instant feedback on stuff. So there is to be said that this isn't going to be suddenly everyone works remotely, because it really isn't for everyone. But I think that for those that are now finding that it is for them, that's really cool. And if those people that are sort of, like say, working in an environment where maybe they're working at home and their partner's not working at the minute, or their kids are around and they're finding it too noisy and distracting because there's just too much going on. I mean, just because people are at home doesn't mean that they're not working. Working remotely is still working. And myself and other people I know have had to say to some, family or friends or whatever, hey, just because I'm working from home doesn't mean I can sit and chat all day. I'm working, and I can't just have conversations with you all day because there's just consider me in an office. If I was at work, you wouldn't be messaging me all that time and calling me all that much. But just because I'm at home doesn't mean that's the case.
Yeah.
So there's definitely that, and that's where sort of the boundary of me being able to close my door and shut that off, that helps. My other half, worked remotely for a while as well, so fully understands that there's concentration element that needs to happen there. So having that space where giving yourself as little distraction as possible is good, and of course for a lot of people that is easier said than done, because if you were working in office and you didn't have need for a home working space, then you'll suddenly find yourself, at the dinner table trying to sort of clear space for a laptop and a, mouse or webcam or something like that,
right.
Or spreading bits of paper everywhere because you're in a planning session, and it can sort of start encroaching on other areas of life, and that then, which doesn't help with people seeing, well, if work's in sort of expanding into the home, why can't home expand into the work? And it, sort of seeing it as a two-way thing, and it's an unfortunate situation that some people are finding themselves in that they haven't got the space for that sort of thing. But if you can carve out a little bit of space for it and just say, right, this is when I'm sat in, say, this chair at this little table, that's work mode. Consider me in another building.
Yeah,
it could help.
Yeah, that's some very good advice. Definitely having one's own space is such a good thing. I mean, I'm not extremely tidy looking around this office, but the rest of the house is. This is where I spend most of my time, I think.
Yeah, no, it's very much the same. It's like the sort of craziness of my office when I sort of this area here looks relatively okay.
Right. Yeah.
Down to my left are a pile of boxes for something I need to sort, and down to my right is cables and screens galore because I'm trying to sort another desk out.
Mm-hmm.
Like that's me, and this is my space, so I can close the door and it doesn't bother my other half because it's not the living room or it's not the dining room. It's kept in here, and as long as I can deal with that little bit of chaos, that's fine because that's ultimately all that really matters. So it's
exactly. Yeah, exactly. Some mornings I have to sort of squeeze myself in past the clutter just to get to the desk.
I've not got to that stage yet, but we're not far off. We're not far off.
So, what we've spoken about some of the advantages, right, of working from home, and we did briefly touch there on some of the negatives. Is there any more disadvantages of working from home?
Sort of one thing I've seen from sort of management styles of things is that I've had previous sort of managers and people have sort of in positions of seniority, as it were, who kind of believe that, like, time in chair, characters typed on keyboard is a measure of productivity.
Right.
And in an office that can be incredibly intimidating. You can feel like, you're being watched over your shoulder all the time, or you're not typing enough and, things aren't going well. But the reality is that that's just not any way to measure work getting done. Mm-hmm. I would rather type less characters and type less code and do the job than it would be to just hack something away. So if me spending half an hour away from my computer thinking about a problem means that I can then write that and solve that problem and test it in, say, an hour, I will take that over 4 hours of frantic typing any day. And I think that from a development level and a sort of quality standard level, that's immeasurable. But then you get, the managers that see that, well, you're not in your computer, you're not at your computer typing. That's not, you're not doing work. But it doesn't factor in the thinking time you go through to solve that sort of thing. There's that quote, what's the quote? Half an hour thinking can solve hours of typing. And it's that's sort of the way I see it. So when you have those sorts of managers, it's from a personal perspective, I see that as a reflection on them more than me.
Definitely.
The idea that they have to sort of control and be aware of all that sort of stuff. It's just not a way to measure productivity and not a way to.
I mean, this must be a micromanager's nightmare, right? I mean.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. That's the micromanagers are going. They don't know what to do with themselves right now. Can everyone log on to Zoom and share their screen so I can see how much you're typing, please?
Right. Yeah. I can remember having some conversations with people where I did a screen share and I was talking, but they couldn't see anything. It was like they couldn't see me type, and I was like, well, I'm talking. I was rubber ducking, and they were like waiting for me to come up with a solution. It's like, well, come off of the call and come back to me in like 10 minutes. I'm sure I'll have the solution then. I mean, nothing's going to change between now and then. So,
yeah, absolutely. That's sort of, for the most part, that is a disadvantage. For people like, clients or customers, there is the issue of bandwidth. There is a thing to be said about a lot of things in person just happen quicker. Half an hour in person might take an hour or more over a call because you're just not able to read the body language as well, or
that's true.
You've not got, this sort of space here on a webcam. It's not a huge amount of space to be able to interact with something compared to having an entire wall for us to work on and, post-it notes or whiteboards to sort of do something. Yeah. We came across that last year when we were working on part of our project. We were sat over the course of maybe a couple of days trying to work out the solution to this particular problem, and none of us could really quite see what the other person was going on about, or we couldn't quite each one of us had our own slightly different idea of what it should do. And in the end we decided, let's just get together and talk about this. We were lucky that we all live in the Midlands. So my two colleagues came over to my place. I threw a whiteboard up on the wall and we stood there in about an hour. We'd worked it out and got it down, and it all made sense and was done. And we kind of like, that's brilliant. Like, we had to travel and get together, but it was so much quicker and I think a lot of things can be done remotely, but sometimes you just need to get together in a room with someone else and a whiteboard and just kind of throw ideas and see what sticks, really.
Yeah. So on that point, there's like when you're having a meeting with, say, more than 4 people on Zoom or whatever, it's very difficult compared to having a meeting in face to face, because you're fighting for airtime. Because like one person has to speak and then the other 3 listen, which is what you normally do when you're with them personally, face to face. But you can tell the body language. You know that maybe there is another idea popping up in someone's head or what have you. And also there's this weird etiquette when you're doing these kind of things. It's polite to listen.
Yeah.
Rather than to butt in. And if you've got, say, more than 4 people, 10, 20 on a call, then it just gets really messy. And if people don't mute their mics, then that becomes a problem. But that's for me, that's really weird. When people say mute your mics as soon as you come onto a meeting, that's really bizarre, because you're shutting people down straight away.
Yeah, it stops it being a conversation, and it feels more like a presentation at that point. It's I talk, you listen, and that's all that happens, and that's not a conversation.
Yeah, and in this wacky world of online collaboration, it's very bizarre for me to hear that, you must mute your mic to join this collaboration. It's like, well, that's not a collaboration, is it? Yeah. So is there any disadvantages from the client's perspective, from the people who actually own the bricks and mortar, the companies? Is there any disadvantages from remote working?
It's a little difficult because a lot of my work isn't too client focused.
Right.
I think that a lot of people do struggle to maintain a kind of a personal connection. So if a client's coming to you and saying, I would like to hire you for this piece of work, there's a lot of tradition in meeting with someone, shaking their hand, looking them in the eye and saying, we're going to do a good job. Mm-hmm. There's a lot to be said with that. And we are, as humans, we are inherently social creatures.
Yeah.
So being able to meet that person in person there's a lot to be said, that there's a relationship and a connection that forms there that maybe can't as easily form online. Mm-hmm. And especially because online, there's so many people that are potentially available to do that. So from a client's perspective, you've now got to sort through a lot more people to work out, well, who's the ones that I can trust and who are the ones that I can't. Mm-hmm. You had to do that anyway previously, but a lot of the time it was word of mouth, and I know someone that did that would sort of bring it in. And if that word of mouth goes away and you start looking to online places to find people to do the work or that sort of thing, it can be very hard to pick out what are the good ones in this big list of people I've got here. There's only, reviews online are very easy to game and make yourself look better than you are. So it can be very difficult to find that. Word of mouth is still a thing. There's still people saying, I worked with this agency or this company and they did that. But from a client's perspective, I think it's more difficult to form that initial sort of bond with someone that you're doing the work with. And I think that's because we've got a history of, and tradition of that's just what happened. You met up, you sign the contracts, you shake hands, you look the person in the eye, and you sort of say, let's do this sort of thing. So that not having that anymore, it becomes a lot more difficult to form that lasting relationship with someone potentially.
Well, I know, especially in the startup world, I know that there's a big drop in projects. Talking from a freelancer's perspective here, it's sort of. I before all of this, I was going out and I was meeting people, shaking their hands, talking about their projects. They knew that, they didn't have a building for me to work at, so they knew it was going to be remote working. But it's the initial contact that is pretty much non-existent at the moment.
Yeah,
because, well, if that was to happen, it would have to be online. So you would have to have that sort of level of recommendation and word of mouth, as you said. There's more people online than there is offline, right? So it's not a case of just going to the pub and having because I went to the pub, saw a potential piece of work not so long ago, and it was just like, two guys in a pub talking about a project, right? And it's remarkable at how two guys in a pub, or just two people in a pub talking about a potential project could actually, come up with some really good piece of work, right? That's landed me a lot of work.
Especially and with things like networking events and that kind of thing, where a lot of these sort of relationships and things are formed. Those networking events, they don't translate to online, because if you had an event, if you had a Zoom call of 100 people, well, again, that's not a manageable environment. In these networking events, little sort of pods of people pop up, and there's a few people talking over there and a few people talking over there. That doesn't translate well to any online platform that we have right now. So it's that ability to kind of overhear a conversation and go, oh, I know something about that, and work over there and sort of talk to them. It doesn't exist. So those networking events, which are very prevalent in the startup world, where they're trying to connect, say investors or technology people with someone who's got an idea, or a business person, someone with a business plan and that kind of thing, that doesn't translate at the minute. And like you say, they've just kind of dropped off the face of the earth at the minute, because it's just not something that can, and I think that translates.
Definitely. And I think that like the first, say, couple of weeks into this, it was quite a sort of a exciting sort of, everybody's working from home. How brilliant is this? I'm going to have loads of time on my hands. And I think that people are starting to realize that, as you mentioned, you still have to work when you're working from home. But there are some difficulties in communicating, because you don't, as you mentioned, you don't have you don't have the ability to sort of listen in or overhear someone saying something and then, come and grab them down the corridor, or, there's no water cooler conversation anymore.
No, there's a lot of things that we do that don't translate to either online tools or platforms or spaces.
Right.
Now, that's not to say that they can't ever. I mean, it depends what sort of ideas and things come up in the following sort of period. I think it would be a tall order for someone to try and recreate that sort of thing. But I think if it can happen, cool. This, if there's ever a time to do it, now is it.
Definitely.
I think that a lot of those things are just very hard problems to solve. As a friend of mine once put it, not all meat space problems can be fixed with computers. And that's kind of how I see some of this. There are some things just can't be solved with technology. They need sort of those in-person interactions.
When we're out of the lockdown, is there anything that you would do differently? I mean, I know that you're a remote dev, but is there anything that you would do slightly differently from what you're doing now?
Yeah, so it's kind of, when we were sort of chatting earlier, I mentioned that from a sort of a purely selfish and personal level, it's largely business as usual for me, because it's the stuff that I do it's online, it's trading, and it's cybersecurity stuff. So it's that those things are more relevant now than ever. So that doesn't change for me. So from a working perspective, I'm not sure there's a lot that will change and I will do differently, because I've kind of had these things in place for a while. I think that it's kind of reinforced for me that I've done the things that I've had in place are the right things, because I've been able to carry on without too much disruption, which is nice, because with everything else going on, people that are being disrupted by this are having to deal with not only the disruption of working from home, but then say the background anxiety of, everything going on in the world. So I've been able to kind of keep that as smooth sailing as I can, which again, on a selfish level is really nice, because it means that I can just carry on. But the one thing I've sort of realized that I really miss, and I will do more of when we come through this is just seeing friends again, because we've got some really close friends that live nearby. One that lives 2 streets over, we can't go and visit them. We've got some friends that are a 10-minute drive down the road, with a 6-month-old baby, and we love seeing them, and we love spending time with them and hanging out with them and the little girl, and we can't do that at the minute. And you can hang out on Zoom or Hangouts and chat over screens and that kind of thing, and that helps, but it's not the same as being able to pick the little girl up and give her a cuddle and play with toys and that kind of thing. There's that you can't do. So I think we've kind of just realized that we just see friends a lot more than we did before. We saw them regularly and before this happened anyway. There was rarely a week went by where we didn't see them all. But doing that more and spending more time with friends and family is probably something that we're going to do, just because you kind of don't realize how much you take it for granted being able to pop out and see that person. Literally overnight, it's like that. It's like, oh, well, now we now we can't go out and see them. So that's that then.
Mm-hmm.
So I think we've just realized that we're going to do more of that, and we're going to spend more time seeing friends and family. And we're not the sort of people that we don't go out to the pub, we don't go out, that sort of thing. That's not us. We like being able to just hang out and chat and have friends over to our house or go to see them, like having the space to be able to do that, or hang out in the garden and have a barbecue.
Yeah.
So that's the sort of thing that we want to do more of, because that's just what we really realize. We really miss that. So that's nothing too different. It's just more of the things that we love doing, really.
Excellent. Yeah, that's really cool. Yeah, I think that I'm like a little kid at the moment, and it's like being told not to do something. I want to do it. I want to do it more.
Yeah, I can fully understand that. Yep.
So like I've just got cravings to climb a hill, or to
just go on a really nice hike.
Right.
Yeah.
And I think one thing that I would love to do is to do more work at coffee shops.
Okay. Yeah.
Because I say that I'm a remote dev, but actually this is my office. So anywhere that isn't this office would be, in my head, remote.
Yeah.
Right.
Yep.
I think I've gone over that hill of saying that this is remote working. This is my office.
Yeah.
And I think what I would do is probably plan my days better. So I would, if I knew that I had a bunch of bugs that I needed to just crack on and do, then I would probably, and I could do them offline, right? I would just go off somewhere and do that. Yep. I don't have to be here, right?
Work at the top of that hill you want to climb.
Work at the top of the hill. Brilliant. Excellent. So, is there anything you wish to add before we skedaddle off?
Not really. No. I mean, one thing I'd sort of probably mention is we've sort of gone on about the things that if you do have the ability to have the space where you can sort of separate something from work, that's a good thing. So if you do have that space, I would make use of it. I've seen a lot of people talking about, being able to work in their pants. Yeah. Sit in their underpants and work, or not have to get dressed and sit on the sofa or pull the laptop up from the side of the bed and work.
Right.
I do my best to make sure that I get up in the morning. I get up, I brush my teeth, I get clean, I put on proper clothes as if I were going out to an office. I go into my office and I work there. My work laptop is in my office and stays in my office. It doesn't go to the bedroom. It doesn't go downstairs.
Wow, that's
because as soon as it does, it means that the sofa is no longer a place of relaxation where I can sit and watch TV. My brain suddenly starts realizing that that's a place where work happens, and I don't get the chance to switch off then. So if you can avoid taking your work everywhere, I would do so, because having a distinct separation is going to help so much.
You're not the only one who's said this to me recently, and it's making me think that I need to change my habits, because I do this. Like after this podcast, I'm going to go downstairs, take my laptop and fix some bugs down on the sofa whilst something's on TV. I think that I probably need to take this advice, I think personally, and actually have some proper non-work time.
And you need that, because that period of non-work time is where I find that my brain does all the problem solving subconsciously that I couldn't do during the day. Mm-hmm. If you never switch off from working, you don't give your brain that chance to sort of process things in the background. It's always in work mode, and it's we've all had it before, where you're trying to solve a bug and you bash your head against it for hours and hours, and then you go to sleep, wake up the next morning, and like that, the answer comes to you and you fix it in 5 minutes. I think that downtime is incredibly important, and not having when your brain starts associating those particular areas of your house with, if I'm sat on the sofa, that means work. You just don't get time to relax and enjoy what you're watching on TV, or switch off and enjoy reading that book, because you're there going, well, I could be working right now. Right. Yeah. I guess with me, there's this is going to sound like a real excuse now, a proper excuse, but I think what the problem I have is that, I don't see it as work first and foremost. It's a hobby, and which pays me, which is, and secondly, freelancers don't get bank holidays. Freelancers don't have, 9 to 5 jobs. Yeah, I can see that. But your points are extremely valid. There does need to be some proper time carved out that is non-worky stuff, and that isn't sleep. Yes. Yeah. The time to do hobbies and read a book, or listen to some music, or watch a film, or play some games. Just something that isn't work. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, definitely. Really good advice there. How can people reach you?
Best place is at Brunty on Twitter, Brunty. That's primarily where I sort of spend my time.
Excellent stuff.
Talking about silly video games and my dragon. That's
your dragon.
The things that are on my mind at the minute. Yeah.
Does your dragon have a name?
He does. He's called Hylas.
Hylas.
Hylas. So we've named our different animals have different themes to their names. Okay. So our hamsters are called Pancake and Syrup. We've got 4 hens, and they're all. We decided to give them old lady names. So we have Agnes, Ethel, Blanche, and Vera.
Oh, Ethel is such a good name for a chicken, yeah.
And then our reptiles are named after things from space. So we have a crested gecko called Mr. Edwin Hubble. We have an African fat-tailed gecko called Lady Mir. And my new bearded dragon is called Lord Hylas. And Hylas was a satellite that was launched to provide broadband. So
wow, I didn't know that. Awesome.
I thought it was quite a cool name for him, so we called him Hylas. Yep.
Nice. That is so cool. That's so cool. So there's a question that I ask people on the end of this season, and that is, if it's actually quite topical, if you could spend time learning something that isn't coding, what would it be and why?
So I kind of gave this some thought, and I originally thought, I've just got a 3D printer. That would be my thing, learning to sort of do 3D modeling and operating and sort of tweaking with that. But I kind of almost consider that a bit too close to programming a little bit. In a way, it feels a bit too close to all the technology stuff that I do day in, day out anyway. So I thought maybe that's not, it's a separate thing, but it's maybe a bit too close to that. So I've been thinking, me and my other half, we've been watching a lot of MasterChef recently. We've been watching Australian MasterChef. That's what we watch on our lunch breaks. When I go down to have lunch, we sit and we have lunch and we watch a bit of that.
Right.
And I've realized that one thing that we both love cooking. We both really like food. And the one thing that we both have never cooked is a souffle. So we've decided that by the time lockdown is over, we want to have successfully cooked souffle. So that's what I really want to learn to do is cook a good souffle.
That's fantastic. Awesome. Do post the photos on Twitter.
I will post them, success or otherwise. I guarantee that, yeah.
Excellent. Oh, that's brilliant. That's fantastic. Well, thank you ever so much, Matt, for coming on. I do appreciate it.
Thank you for having me. It's been good.
It's been great fun. I wish you well, and keep
Likewise.
Healthy. And for those watching on the YouTubes and for those listening on the podcast, happy coding, everybody. I'll see you again soon. Cheers. Bye-bye.